Assalamu alaikum. Welcome everyone to our second episode of Envision Business Talks Live, our new platform that we have designed honestly out of a personal experience. I felt so privileged to have the opportunity to talk to masterminds around me and get some tips and share insights. And I thought, why don't I invite you guys to this conversation? Today, we will be discussing the key leadership principles a CEO requires during a crisis. When I was thinking about a crisis, the first name that comes to mind, Mr.Multaq Al-Morished, the man, the warrior who jumped in a sinking ship, sinking ocean, sinking region, when the oil prices were going down, and took the liberty and the ownership, if you will, to take Tasnia and bring it to life in a way. Now we're going for a second hit with the coronaviruses. So I wanted to have the opportunity for us all to have the opportunity to listen to Mr. Multaq and learn from his wealthy experience. Welcome, Mr. Multaq.
Thank you, shukran. Thank you, shukran.
أهلا بيك. طبعا coming from people business, being myself, I cannot dig into talking of the hard talk of business before we all get to know the man behind the screen. So we all would like to know who is Multaq, the person and the man. Can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. I basically grew up in the eastern coast of Saudi Arabia, in a small Bedouin town. It's a town called Anak or Anats in the accent of the locals there. It's a purely tribal town. Happened to be the tribe was Bani Khalid. And anyway, it was between Dammam and Qatif, closer to Qatif. At that time, Anak did not have a high school of its own because it was too small. So I finished my high school in Qatif High School. At that time, there were only high school in Qatif or Dammam. So all the villages around that area either being bused to Dammam or to Qatif. There were about 5 of us at that time from Anak in Qatif High School. The rest were from Qatif and the other villages around Qatif. We are then in 76 when we graduated from high school. Science was the height of the scholarships in Saudi Arabia. And so I took a scholarship to the US, and it was almost all the kids wanted to go. And of course, I joined. Went to America, spent almost 16 plus years, did my undergrad in University of Denver, Colorado, in math and nuclear physics. Then I moved to Princeton. I did my master's degree in nuclear engineering and fusion tokamak reactors. Then I stayed on, worked 2 years in Princeton in the research in the nuclear industry. Fusion, of course, is the new, the new nuclear. It's not proven yet for power, but the idea was to produce power out of it. It also can get into bombs and stuff. But anyway, the idea was power production for the research, which I did a lot at that time. Then I left the nuclear in around 82, 83. It was not so good in the industry, in the nuclear industry that time, especially after 3 Mile Island in Pennsylvania in the US. So all the grants and all the research kind of stopped in the US. So all the scientists basically left the industry. So I left and joined Shell Oil in Houston, Texas. Worked about 3 or 4 years in the refinery as a chief engineer, then moved on to chemical, worked in cracker and polymer plant in Deer Park, Texas, outside Houston, basically. Then moved to the headquarters of Texas, senior engineer. At that time was the beginning of the Sadaf project, which is a joint venture between SABIC and Shell. So being a Saudi and things, so Shell asked me if I want to join the team, so I did. And to cut the story, long story short, like in 89, 88, Shell sponsored me or paid for me, basically. I did my nuclear at Princeton University, forgot to say that, in the East Coast, in New Jersey. And then Shell sponsored me to do my MBA, which I did in Stanford University in California, in Palo Alto, and I graduated from the business school in '89. And after that, I moved to Saudi Arabia with Shell, and then moved from senior engineers to different positions, ran engineering as manager engineering, and then ran a bunch of jobs, then vice president of engineering and operation, and then the president of the company in Saudi. And in the late 90s, around 99, Mohammed Al-Madi, the CEO of SABIC, asked me to take over Hadid. Hadid was really bad shape at that time, needed a massive restructuring to save the company, was losing billions. So I went to Hadid. I knew nothing about the steel industry. But as you know, if you know the numbers, you can manage people, you can run these. It's not magic. You just have to run it with the people who know the business. So I restructured Hadid, did a lot of work. It was a well-known story in Saudi Arabia, the restructure of Hadid, the rescue of Hadid. So that went on. Then I moved to SABIC, then created the shared services. First shared services ever done in this part of the world was done by SABIC around the year 2000. So I led the shared services formation, managed to convince all the foreign partners, which was very difficult, like ExxonMobil and Shell and all others. So that was done. Then in 2004, I became the chief financial officer of SABIC. Did a lot of milestone things like SABIC rating, issued the first sukuk in Saudi Arabia by SABIC. After SABIC was rated, the whole Gulf companies from Dubai to Kuwait to others started to get rated. And then did massive financing of GE Plastic, was involved in the acquisition of GE Plastic and ran the finance for it. Was involved in lots of SABICs. I was really basically among other friends from SABIC involved heavily in the formation of Yansab and then the formation of Saudi Kayan. Was the chairman of both, chairman of the board of both for a number of years till I basically left SABIC. And then I also looked after SABIC business in Alba in Bahrain in the aluminum industry because of my background that I gained in the metal from Hadid. So I've done all that. So I was in America, of course. I was living there, thinking to stay there. My mom insisted that I come back because of my uncle passed away. In the tribal tradition, when the oldest son or male must. So when my uncle died, my father died before my uncle. So when my uncle died, the leadership of the clan came to me. So I had to come back. So I came back to please my mother. And then stayed, didn't go back. I was married with a American lady, and fortunately, she could not take the life in Saudi Arabia at that time. So ended up in amicable divorce at that time. And then I was in SABIC till 2015 when Tasnia asked me to take over because they run into similar problem as Hadid. So that's what I did. So we did massive restructuring, and the company classical, what's called in the business school. First, you basically restructure your company, then you restructure your debt, and then if that doesn't solve your problem, you restructure your capital, and that's what we did just 2019 when we merged our crystal business, our titanium dioxide, with that of Tronox in New York, creating the world's largest titanium dioxide company. So that's in a nutshell, that's how the situation. I managed SABIC Europe from Riyadh for almost a year, managed SABIC IP, Innovative Plastic, which was the XGE, also from Riyadh for a year with a monthly, spending a week every month in Holland, Amsterdam, or in Sitter in Massachusetts, the US. So I've been involved in running businesses globally. So that's in a nutshell what it is.
Amazing journey. Thank you so much for sharing this insightful story with us.
Thank you.
Have there been any Ivy League school that you did not go and graduate from? Mashallah,
Well, just lucky, I guess. If you ask me, when we first went to America in 1976, if I know anything about Princeton or Stanford or Harvard, Yale's, and all these famous American schools, I'd have told you absolutely none. We don't know. We're just a bunch of kids the
Yeah.
government threw in America, and almost not as today where the government take care and help you and do things. In the old days, people who, my generation, who went there know what it was like. They just send you there and that's it. Good luck. So
Yeah.
we had to learn English. We had to get accepted in universities. We had to live, and we definitely lived the American life. We were inside the society. Whenever, like I see nowadays, some people, kids living together like their own commune. In that time, that was not. We just melted in the American white society. So
Wonderful.
thank you.
Mr. Mutlaq, I know how modest, how practical, how agile you are as a person. Some people who can criticize, the theory versus the practicality. Reflecting on what you just said, what do you advise us?
Wallahi, it's in advice, Nehru's in what sense? In what subject? Advice on what?
Shall I go now and get for
No,
PhD? So
go
I
ahead.
can
I want to know what's
equip
advice
those
on what
things.
so I can be more specific.
Yeah, no, يعني أنا I meant the especially nowadays looking at how one can progress in their career, progress in their business. So there are
Okay.
some theories
Okay,
that
okay,
says
okay.
practicality is
Okay.
enough. Not need
Okay,
schools
okay.
anymore.
Okay. I got you. Well, a combination of engineering and finance is a very deadly combination because we always want to be specific. These kind of people are driven by numbers. So, these kind of disciplines, you have to be specific. That's why I ask what the specific things. So, in reality, I am a person who came from a Bedouin, nomadic background. As a matter of fact, I was the first generation settled in town, and my mom told me I was like 3 or 5. I don't know, Frank, to be honest. When we settled, before that, we were Bedouin, moving north all the way, I don't know where, Palestine, God knows where, but south all the way to Qatar or Oman or something, God knows what. So what I really would say in anything, in career, especially in things, is education. There is one thing that nobody can take from you. Any government, any authority, anything. They can take anything you have. They can take your house, they can take your money, they can take whatever. Even they take your kids or whatever. But there is one thing no one can take from you, and that's education. Education is the things that you have as a person that nobody ever will be able to take from you. And so that's my point. And don't kid yourself. Unfortunately, I see that nowadays it's quite common, unfortunately, in our part of the world, is people accumulating degrees.
Yeah.
Degrees are nothing but a piece of paper. I mean, if they are not put into practice and used to benefit the person or benefit the country or benefit the society, then they are useless. I know we have the disease of PhDs in this part of the world. What's the use of PhDs if they're not serving a purpose? It's not that. You need to be really educated, and you need to also be open-minded to see what others do and whatever. It doesn't matter if they're different from you in color, race, religion, whatever. You have to be open-minded to see what others are doing. No one is born knowing it all. President Reagan, bless his soul, long time ago, said, even in America, he said, we in America do not have corner on the brains. يعني احنا الامريكان ما عندنا حجر العقول اللي عندنا احسن من العالم كله. معنا brains are everywhere. And therefore, we must learn from others. And that's the way we progress. And if you look at civilization throughout history, each one was built on the other. From Greeks to Arabs to Persians to whoever, so Chinese or what kind. So that's really, and work hard. Anybody tell me you'll get up by, unfortunately here we always believe, a lot of people believe when wasta will get me, connection will do, yeah, maybe, we'll get you up to a point,
Yeah.
up to a point. But after that, you have to show what you got. I've been asked many times by people, what is the use of the degree? I said, look, the degree will always get you through the door. Once you're in the room, you have to prove yourself. And you are there. It's saying, well, I have a degree from Harvard or Princeton, Stanford, whatever, MIT's, is not going to help you once you are in the job. Then you're going to compete against the Joe Blows of the world. And then you have to show what you have. So work hard, really work hard. That would be my advice.
Thank you so much. I just want to remind you all, if anybody has a question, please post it. And towards the end of the conversation, Mr. Multaq will be more than happy to answer any questions you have. So let's take us to crisis. Now we're all living a crisis. We have lived another, previous crisis, and it seems just that things are getting harder and harder every time. So you are the expert in this subject matter. How do you see organization should ensure the well-being and safety of people during crisis?
Thank you. I have the good luck or the bad luck of running the oil spill fighting effort in Jubail during the Iraq-Iran war, when there is over millions, I don't know how many, millions of barrels were pumped in the Arabian Gulf. I was actually in charge of saving the seawater cooling and desalination plant in Jubail. And we ran a huge operation that's managed by SABIC and the companies of Jubail. It was a private effort managed by us. And we recovered over 2 million barrels at that time in an area called Ras Abu Ali in north of Jubail Industrial City. People from there, they know what I'm talking about. So I had the pleasure or, the misfortune of knowing that. The most important thing in crisis, they, of course, going to happen without warning. And when they happen, it always pays to be prepared. Success is basically when opportunity meets preparation. Success is not fate, حظي والله زين, my luck. No, that's just not. That's not logic. Success comes when opportunity meets preparedness or planning. So planning, scenario planning are most important. We in the chemical industry, I know SABIC for sure, and also all others, I'm sure, Aramco, with all due respect, and other Gulf companies, in Tasnia specifically, I know, and I know SABIC also extremely well, but I'm not going to talk about SABIC, it's not my job. So we have, normally when you run a hydrocarbon plant, you always expect fires and explosion and the worst. So your plan priority is always to protect your people. That's number one, is saving lives. So we all have plans, we drill the plans in the chemical plant, we have fire drills, we have emergency drills, and so you prepare yourself. After you secure your people, you really come down to securing your assets, your equipment. That was the logic. Then we moved into a second phase, what we call continuity, business continuity. Okay, now you have an incident. How is your business going to continue? And so we all have scenarios. We did. I was in SABIC. I was personally involved in these, and in Tasnia, then it became the same thing. We did basically is we never planned anything like COVID-19 or Corona. That's the reality. We never dreamed of it. But we did scenario of, for example, closing of the Arabian Gulf. How was going to happen to our product? Are we going to ship from Jubail to Yamba or Jeddah to be open to the Red Sea or part of Oman, whatever? Then we have scenarios in loss of fuel or feedstock from Aramco by an accident or sabotage or gas. We just make scenario, use feedstock. It doesn't matter how you use it. And so we have these. So when COVID or Corona actually came in, we were kind of lucky because we are in a way prepared, but of course we're not prepared for a contagious disease and having that. So all of us, I think, and Tasnia is no exception, basically we put a lot of our people working from home. We're lucky in the chemical industry, especially in Saudi, that we have already the infrastructure. People can go online, check their emails, do everything they can do in the office. We have that before. That was just the way the business was going. So when this unfortunate pandemic came, we were really kind of ready, not for it, but for the crisis per se. So we have know how to talk to our customer, tell them we're okay, the plants are running, we're continuing. We changed the shifts from 4 shifts to 3 shifts. So we work from 8 hours to switch to 12 hours. So we have more operators in the plant in case we have COVID cases. You have to take the people out for quarantine. And it came handy. We use it. We had cases. Thank God we have no death. But that happened. And of course, part of the COVID, as we all know, giving people the masks and taking temperature of people coming in, did not have visitor unless it's a must. So that was the case. And thank God it really worked fine. I know in Saudi, not a single shipment was missed, not only in Tasniya, but all the rest of the boys in the chemical industry.
Thank you so much. You told us about how you managed, if you will, the most important aspect of an organization, which is people and their well-being. Sure. Let's talk about the most urgent assets, which is finance. How sustainable financing and stable cash reserve can be ensured in a crisis.
Yeah, sure. Well, in a large corporation, especially the public traded ones, us and others, normally you have credit lines. This is just normal way of business. It depends on your size, depends on the size of your debt and the size of your procurement and spending and cost. So first lesson, things which we all did, and I learned that from the US, restructuring Shell when I was a young engineer, and learned it in Hadid and then later on in Tasniya. You don't have to worry about the cash coming. That's not your problem. Your problem is cash leaving. So you have to stop every penny, or halala, since Saudi penny is the American lingo, every halala leaving the company. So you start to scrutinize your cost.
To stop the bleeding.
So no cash leaves the corporation. They will have to you have to pay people, you have to do things, of course, but these are the bare minimum. Mm-hmm. So that's your first thing. Then, of course, we in most large corporates, we have credit lines with all the major banks. And Tasniya has credit lines. We have some of the best finance in the whole region, in my opinion, Fawaz Al-Fawaz, our CFO. So we had almost 2 billion riyal in credit line with the banks. So whatever happens, God knows what, we can just call the bank and take the cash if we run into a short-term liquidity problem. That was, again, like I said, that was not made for Corona. That was done for normal business contingency in case you have a fire, in case of explosion, you have no cash flow coming, the market hit the bottom and you can't sell, for example, like the subprime, what happened for like a month, the market was mostly closed. And, and also some companies in the US, I know, big company almost went bankrupt because they didn't have the cash. They were living off what you call the commercial paper market, the CP market. We don't have it in the Gulf country, but that's an American, which is like a bond, but it's only 364 days. But anyway, credit line was the name of the game. But before the credit line, it's really controlling your cost. Worry about cash leaving, not cash coming. Cash will come by itself, but leaving is your challenge.
We are by crisis. We all get kind of in a panic mode. How important it is to have a well-coordinated and standardized communication system and place to ensure transparency, even when you have very good clarity in a way.
Yeah, very good question. Look, the enemy of any preparation or plan is panicking. And that's why, again, what happened to be, we have the nature of our industry, we are prepared. We are prepared for like fire and explosion and so on. So if you are prepared for that and you prepare how to handle even media, we give people courses and presentation skills, how to answer media questions in case you have, even if you have fatality, what you can tell the families of the deceased person. So we have all these luckily in place. So we just trigger them for the corona case, and they work very nicely. The business was run, communication was clear. We have communication. I could not go to the, for example, to the operational side globally. So I recorded the message like I talked to you today, recorded the message, and the message was as an update to all employees, explain what's happening in the company. The enemy of anybody is the lack of information. And that opened door for rumors and exaggeration and all total nonsense. So I have like a monthly video recorded and, talk to the people about the subject, what's happening in the company, let's find out our financial situation. Because you have to tell the people, because some people are worried about their paycheck next month. So you have to explain that, and you have to be honest. If we have a problem, we have a problem. And, you have to explain so people can plan, people can be ready. But that really, all that preparation we had for accident and incidents and so on came in handy in this case. And we used it, and it was quite nice. Now, of course, we have to modify it as we went, and there were some gaps we have to plug and so on. But in general, that things worked for us.
It was manageable. Yeah, great to hear about that. How about, crisis management teams? Do you have crisis management teams to manage short-term liquidity impact, as well as to be able to initiate the appropriate countermeasures when it's time to do so?
Yeah, again, back to this, again, in the chemical industry, you're already expecting the fire explosion. So you have actually two teams. You have one, basically, the plant team, the people, the engineers, the maintenance, the operation people who will, after the fire is out or explosion is out, which is done by the fire brigade, those people go assess the damage, see how can be recovered, can we start up something, can we fix things. So that's the team is hands-on in the plant. Then you have planning team, which include day management of the site itself, and procurement and others. So you need to buy equipment, buy things, bring things in emergency. Then, depends on the size of the situation. It can have an executive management team, which includes the CEO, CFO, and some executives that can also get involved. Luckily, in Corona, we did not reach that stage because it was, a common thing. The government was doing things. So the executive team was not really, quote unquote, activated. But it's used to send messages, record messages by the CFO, messages by me, the CEO, explaining and giving people what's happening, what's going on, what we are doing, and just passing that information. Really, really making people relax, and not worry about what's coming.
Going back to budgeting and the golden advice that you mentioned about watching your spending, which is extremely important in crisis. How about, if you will, budgeting and business planning process to be prepared for crisis, and how can you implement such a rule in early warning signs about early mechanism, if you will?
That was not really part so much of planning for accident and so on. That's you have budget, you have business plans. But the minute a crisis like that, anything is out of the window. What nobody can say, well, I'm going to meet my budget today. Nothing is going to happen. So what we do is basically run scenarios in our budget using the prices of today and putting worst case scenario and best case scenario. Like we have a price today of this much. What happens if it's today and continue for the rest of the year? What's going to happen? Are we going to meet our obligation of paying debt, paying our people, of course, and so on? Then you discount it by 10 or 15 or 20%, and you say, okay, assume price will go that way. So you run another model. And then you run another positive scenario by 10 or 15% up. And that helps you to manage your cash, to manage your things. And, if it comes, situation is bad, of course, you talk to your banks and you do things. But unfortunately, luckily for most of us, did not reach that stage because luckily for the system in Saudi Arabia, the government and things, port stayed empty, as port stayed operational, open, and shipping was coming. So the chemical industry was shipping, and that's our source of revenue. The worst thing could happen to you as an operator is you have your plant running, but you cannot ship. That's the worst. So budget has to be modified, and we are modified, and we communicate with our board what we call an updated budget plan. So they're not surprises at the end of the year. Boards normally, I sit on some of them, I chair some of them, I'm CEO, report to some of them. Worst thing, boards don't like surprises. First lesson, if you are a CEO, report to a board or a board member. Boards, they don't like surprises. So it's better to keep them informed and get their understanding. They will understand because everybody knows what's happening with COVID-19 and Corona, but it's good to tell them, show them by numbers. Numbers are important. Numbers speaks for themselves.
Sure. How about the brand disruption impact? How can we prepare, if you will, to recover from its aftermath?
I think because in manufacturing industry, because there is no damage to your plant, you keep the plant you're running, recovery is quite fast. It's not like we've seen in July now, June started, we've seen prices going up and people booking shipment at higher prices. So recovery is quite fast in our business. Of course, we are not a retail or some other industry where you really like the hospitality industry. If you're hotels and airlines, that's disaster. I mean, I sit on the board of Saudi Airlines. I tell you, it's a nightmare if you're in that business. But in the manufacturing world, you're okay. You're all right. You're running, and therefore you're just going to do better. And that's the name of the game. It just happened to be your industry. You're lucky in it. Like if you're making pharmaceutical today, you're making good money.
Yeah, sure. How about supply chain? I mean, have you defined supply chain and production risks that crisis might pose, and what could be done to mitigate those risks?
Yeah, now that's another good. That's what goes back to the question I was talking about business continuity. We all in the industry have this business continuity that we drill and we exercise. We already have plans for alternative supplies, alternative things. Thank God, because of the ports and the airports for air freight kept open. So we did not, need to trigger that. But we talk to our suppliers. A lot of them have to ship the material and stuff from other location. Like, in the beginning, China basically closed. And so a lot of stuff that came from China specifically and Asia in general was almost didn't come. Luckily, a lot of the industry have capacity in their warehouses and they have spares and things. So they managed because the duration that China closed was months, not years, 2 months or so after that. So, but we had alternative supplies that were from contingency planning before, business continuity plan. That stuff being brought instead of from like east, came from the west. Some actually stuff we learned to make locally because, need is the mother of invention. حاجة أم الاختراع. So we did. So that helped us a lot. And, like I said, because ports and airports remain operational, it was not so bad, except the time when China closed and some Asian country was a little disruption, but not so bad, not so bad.
In conclusion, does that mean your business model is resilient enough to recover from the impact of a crisis and manage potential crisis in the future, God forbid?
In our industry, again, not only Tasnia or anybody, in our industry, as long as your assets are intact, safe, your supply chain, both imports and exports, are open, you damn well you can do quite good managing your business. The market is the market. Prices goes down, but okay, you have to take it. But if you can't ship and you can't deliver, then that's where the problem comes. And now we learn from what happened with COVID and all that is you need to have a diversification of your supply chain, your suppliers who bring you things. You need also to do something about your market. You can't be concentrated in one spot, even if it gives you better return to be, let's say, in the East or in Europe or in Asia, Africa, whatever. So it pays now to have diversified both your outlet, which is basically your product leaving, and your inlet, which is your spares, your material, your consumable, all you have. That it really, you cannot rely on one country per se or one region per se. So you better, it's going to cost you a little money, but ultimately that's what's happened. And you see it now, a lot of companies in the US and Europe talking about not the efficiency of supply, but the resilience of supply, the supply chain. But there is a lot of hype also. We have to be careful. People saying, oh, we'll make it resilient, we'll make things here, we're not going to go to China or something. Come on, after another 6 months, the cost will drive people to the lower place. Doesn't matter. People emotionally can say, oh, we're going to do. Fine, I think some of it will be done, don't get me wrong. Some of it, but this hype, especially on the Western media or the Western environment, about moving away from China or moving away, that's not realistic in my mind. That's just more emotion than reality.
It's in my DNA. I cannot not ask the question. How about diversity, and what do we need to do to have more female engineers?
I think first we have to start. I'm talking now. I talk about Saudi Arabia. First, we have to have female at the workforce, before we go into the plant. We in Tasnia just started hiring female about 2016. The reason was because we all know the restriction that brought by we call it Arab, Saudi Arabia, Mutawwa, religious establishment. So until the government in Saudi made it, thank God they did, they made it easier for us as employers to hire, because in the past they did not say you can't, but they put all kinds, different doors, different elevators, different this. Come on, no company is going to build elevators and doors, and this is totally not logical. So now we are becoming normal. We're becoming like the best, like everybody else. I hate to this in Arabic sometimes. Saudi say we are خصوصياتنا, احنا لنا خصوصيات. يا أخي ما في أحد له خصوصيات. All the world is the same. We all human. We all have our issues. We all have our goods and we all have our bads. It's nothing special about anybody. So we're entering now the workforce, and we have a long way to go. It will take time. Our society in general is still a male-dominated society. It will take some effort on the part of companies, and actually, to be honest, in the part of regulators, because I sit on the Board of Director Institute. I was one of the founding members of that, and we promote diversity at the board level, at the C-suite we call it. But it's gonna take time. I think you need sometimes, you need to initiate something. In the nuclear industry, where I spent years of my young age, you can't get the nuclear reaction going by itself. You have to have an initiator to initiate the reaction. Once it's on, it sustains itself. It happened to be in the nuclear, it's a coordinated kind of explosion that produces at the center the maximum heat that actually forces the uranium to split. And therefore, you need a government rule to force companies in general to put females on the board. I went through it in Holland. Who can tell me more open society than the Dutch, than Holland? Holland, when I was the chairman of Sabic Capital in Amsterdam back in 2013 or 14, they actually came with a regulation that 30% of the boards of Holland, Netherlands, must be females. So we actually have to do, that case. And I think in our part of the world, I think there is some need to regulate and push. And I hate regulation. I don't like regulation personally. But certain things you need a trigger. You need something to ignite them. Once they're ignited, then they can sustain itself. So I think that we need that. Having engineers, I know Aramco, I know from personal experience, some relatives, some friends, They have female engineers in the refinery many years ago, but Aramco is a different world. Aramco is a state within a state. So it's a different world. We cannot compare. But the rest of us, first, I think we will have more. They will be in the plant one day. Look, when I worked in the refinery in 1983 in Houston, Texas, there was not a single female process engineer in the control room. Forget operators, impossible. There's no females. When I went there to visit years, like 20 years or something later after I joined USABIC and things, but went to see some of the old boys, all the old friends when I went to Houston. More than half of the process engineers in that same refinery were females. You know? So it will happen, but I think from my point of view, be realistic. First, let's start with the easy jobs. Let's not go straight with the hard and dirty in a chemical plant and all that. Let's first start in the offices, finance, IT, procurement, HR, so many you can do. Then we move on to the next step. That doesn't mean we say no, but we should concentrate our effort where we get more big bang for our buck, like they say. We get more bang for the buck.
Thank you so much, Mr. Multaq. We have a question. Aiming to go back to normal after this crisis, do you think that we are going to have a new definition of normal life?
Life as we live, people in our homes and whatever, I think won't change a heck of a lot. But life in the office, the work in offices, I think will change tremendously. I think I was one of those who, if you ask me before this crisis, what do you think of people working from home? I will throw cold water on it. I said, no, people will screw around, will not be serious, blah, 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 blah. It turned out actually people work from home harder and more hours than they work at the office. That's honesty, we see it. So I think companies, first of all, not to be, driven by cost just like that, but I think they will realize maybe they don't need the headcount they have now. They self-manage and they maybe did with less, so they will question their headcount. They will really question the offices. Do you need 2,000 square meter of office for the company? Why don't you run it for 1,000 and the rest of those people work from home? Because office costs money, cleaning, rent, if you don't own, utilities, all janitorial, everything. And even, today, especially Saudi companies, and I'm sure in the Gulf countries, they pay what we call transportation allowance, which is 10% of the base salary. If people work from home, a company doesn't need it to pay 10%. That's immediately saving 10% of the company payroll. If assuming all, let's not all, let's say maybe half, 5%, or even 2-3%. So I think that will really be a breakthrough. It also will work for the diversity of the gender, because I think a lot of women will like it also working from home. And easier for them with kids and so on. Some men also like it, but I think more of the female side probably. So I think we will see a shift of the office being moved away, and technology like we've seen just in a few months with what we have now with Zooms and Microsoft Teams and all kinds of stuff made it quite easy really to do things. We run, like I said, every company in Saudi is no exception. We run our businesses where they're like in the office. Of course, you can't run a chemical plant. Can't run a chemical plant or a steel plant from home, but a lot of things can be done. So I think my answer, there will be a big change in the work environment, but a personal, I think, I think we humans still like to travel. It's like to go to the beach. It's like to go to see other countries. I don't think that will change a heck of a lot.
We have a question again about education. That, do you really believe that education is adding value? Even the US has adopted skills rather than certification as part of their hiring process.
yes, it's the most important thing is the profession, is the skill, of course. But certification is part of skill development. In my simple mind, you can't separate the two. You need, but if I'm going to hire somebody, whoever it is, somebody, how do I know? There are things, companies have to look at. That's why you have ISO 9001. That's why company come in with medical license and professional engineers, and that's a way for companies to assure they're getting the right skills they want. So definitely, but to tell me no education, no certification, that will be very difficult. At least maybe I'm an old generation, I'm old school. But but like I said earlier, the degree gets you through the door. But after inside, you have to prove yourself. And that's my point. That's where the skills comes in. You can have a Princeton or a Harvard degree or Stanford, MITs. And if you can't function inside, then forget it. The degree is worthless. And like I was joking earlier, or say serious about have accumulation of PhDs in this part of the world. And if you look at the value of these things, they're just paper. That is totally useless then, because you need the skill. I don't need a piece of paper.
We have a question, and thank you first to you. The question is, would you consider this adaptable leadership approach as an opportunity for change, while the process will combine two important elements, conservation and reinvention?
Yes, in general, I do. And that's what's called in management, situational management. The situational management, you don't manage everything the same. Each situation has to be managed differently. And therefore, yes, that's definitely is going to change. And it's not because of the crisis, because the way we are moving as societies into the modern age, into more machine learning, artificial intelligence, and all these things. When I was in college doing some computer class at that time, people were using punch cards, and the computer room was big as a huge building to house the machine. Now it's not, in your little mobile has more power than Apollo 11 that took Armstrong to the moon. So it's, definitely, I fully agree. They definitely will happen. The crisis, this corona actually will speed it up a little bit, but it's there and it's happening.
We have a question on the governmental aspects. In your view, what are your insights in terms of recent government decisions to support economies globally, locally, regionally?
Well, I'm not in government. I personally never worked in any government in my life. Although I advised the government, I was in the special study for the Supreme Economic Council of Saudi Arabia, advising the Council of Ministers at the time, during King Abdullah, plus his whole time, involved in some other government advisory, but not really working for the government itself. So the basic rules is in the economy is really when you have a recession, you should increase spending and cut interest rates. And so that is something. You see Germany started reducing their VAT, the UK announced cut the VAT from 15 to 5, because you need to revive the consumer. The economy will start working if people go out and buy things. And you need, and also what you need is like what the Fed did, and what's also Saudi Central Bank SAMA did. You need to pump money in the market. You need liquidity, and that's happening. I'm not an economist. I took economy as a minor in college a long time. But the basic rules I know in business is you have recessions, you lower your interest rate, you cut your taxes. And when the economy heats up, you increase interest rate and increase your taxes. So I think we're in the situation where it's a recession situation. And you see what others are doing. You see what America is doing putting trillions in the economy, and Europe is doing, the master of taxes in the world, in my humble opinion, are the European. The highest taxes on earth are all in Europe. They are cutting tax. If you were to talk to a German government a few years ago to cut tax, it's like, this is heresy, Now they are. So situation requires these things. So that's in my opinion.
We have another question about how is Tasnia contributing to Saudi Vision 2030?
We're very supportive of it. In the specific areas, it's such a big vision, of course. We're only a small company. We're moving into strategic metals. We are one of the only companies in Saudi Arabia that make titanium metal. It's a strategic metal in the aerospace, planes and rockets and satellites. And we make about 8 to 10% of world production of titanium. So we are going online, investing, and we believe in the government drive to bring more of the aerospace industry to Saudi Arabia. And therefore, we're already ahead with the titanium metal plant running in Yamba, already producing about 15,500 tons of titanium. Sounds a little, but that amount is big when it represents about 10% of world production, because titanium is a very rare and very expensive metal to make. And so the whole world maybe make 180 or, not a huge amount. So yeah, we are in line with it, and we do our part, but we're not, I mean, let's face it, we say in Arabic, God bless those who knows their limit. We're not the Sabiq in the worlds or the Aramcos or the BSFs or Dows. We do things per our size.
Mm-hmm. Another question, do you think when it comes to leadership, do we need to change our ways during the current crisis, and how to customize it?
Very good question, really. I happen to be one of those who really don't believe you can change a human being. I lived in America almost 18, 20 years. And back in the 80s, there was the fad in the States that you can make a leader from anybody. Mm-hmm. But I'm sorry, I disagree with that. Leadership itself is something, it's kind of in the DNA you're born with, and part is developed as you go. I like to make it similar to a rough diamond. If you've ever been in a diamond mine, diamond is ugly gray stone, mm-hmm. if you see it in nature. But in the hand of a diamond maker, he mm-hmm. makes it shine and brilliant and hundreds, millions of dollars. So leadership is like that. The person must have that part somewhere in their DNA, born with it. And then you develop that as you go. So I think leadership, of course, has to be adaptable. I go back to what I said earlier, situational management. Yeah. You can't manage everybody the same. Like if you have a new employee who's just new, the situation is kind of dictating and telling kind of management, because they don't know. You have to tell them, do this, do this. After that, you start to drop the telling and increase the empowering and let them decide. Instead of saying you go to A to Z, first you go to A, then B, C, and D. After a while, you tell them just A to Z. You don't say what's in between. And that's what comes. So leadership is something, you need also some charisma a little bit. You can't have a leader, again, that's my own Mutlaq Al-Morished opinion, okay? I don't want to say anything. My own opinion, if you can't communicate and you can't publicly speak to the people, it will be very difficult to lead. That doesn't mean every leader have to be the best public speaker, John F. Kennedy of the world or whatever. But you need a certain amount of that. And, a leader like this, we say always must lead from behind. You really should lead by example. Like I always tell people in the spiel a long time ago, and I notice people come late to work. I always come early. And I said, look, you don't tell people come to work early when you yourself come late. That just doesn't work. So that is the case with leadership.
Any advice for startup leaders during COVID-19 crisis?
Communicate, communicate, communicate. The enemy of any organization is rumors and stories going around unsubstantiated. The most important is tell people the truth, no matter how bad or how hurt it is. We always, in some of the stuff I teach sometime in courses in management, and sometime in MBA class at University of Petroleum in Bahrain, is tell the bad news first. So be honest, just tell people what's going on, because eventually people will find out and people will know. You know, when I was young in Shell years ago, there was a joke in Shell at that time. They said, if you want, because management believed people have problem reading. People don't read the memos, and that time was sent by memos, no internet. So they said, if you want people to read something, write on top of it, top confidential. And it could be all garbage, but write top confidential.
Of course.
So people will read it like hell. So it's the same thing here. Exactly the same thing. So, you need to communicate and tell people, the bad news first, and then tell them the good news, because we always remember, by the way, the last thing. So we want people to walk away with a positive thing. So tell the bad first, and then the good, so they remember the good and they forget the bad.
Sure. Any advice for us, for executive search professionals? How can we better serve our clients during crisis?
Again, really communicate with them what's happening. If you have a problem in your plant, you cannot deliver, don't wait till the last minute to tell your customers.
Yeah.
Be proactive in your communication. Don't wait for them to ask. Actually, volunteer the information. Tell them, explain the situation as much as you can in verbally, writing, whatever means of communication you have. And today we have all kinds of means, thank God, not like the old days. So I think for our client, we must tell them what we can do, and we have also to be honest and tell them what we cannot do. Because there are certain things we cannot do. Let's not kid ourselves or try to, hide things. People eventually will know, and we're all smart. Nobody is better than anybody under the sun. Today, people read the same thing, they watch the same movies. They don't, you can't think. Maybe some people in their mind think they are better than anybody, but in my humble opinion, the technology and the media and all that is what I call the equalization, the Godfather equalization. Everybody more or less came into the same level of kind of things. And so to serve your client best is honesty. Tell them what's if they are a customer, tell them what's happening with you. If you are yourself as a customer, buy from them and tell them if you can pay on time or you have delay, because they will understand. We have to extend payment terms to customer, which is normal, like 30 days, right? Give 60. And, so let's just say it, tell people.
Thank you so much, Mr. Multaq. You've been very generous with us. We all enjoyed this conversation very much, and we're looking forward for more opportunities in the future.
Thank you, Nairoz, and I wish you and your Envision partnership the best, and I hope I gave some useful information. Hope I don't upset anybody out there. I am known to be blunt and to the point. I would say, like I said, it's deadly to have finance and engineering combination, because to be very logical and not on the emotional side. So I know my weakness and I admit it. So I could be, for some people, quite blunt. So, but that's the way it is.
I believe the chemistry was working very well.
Thank you. Thank you much. Take care and have a good weekend.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
You too.
Bye-bye.